Welcome to Hyperbarn Radio. We're coming at you straight out of the wasteland. With me today is the Lore Keeper, as always, and I am Celtic God. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like us, and ring that little ding-a-ling. In addition, I'd like to remind everybody that we do run a Wednesday podcast, the Super Secret Podcast, available on all podcasting platforms so far as I know. But aside from that, how are you doing today, Lore Keeper?
I'm doing all right. And, well, I'll let you introduce the subject since it's...
All right. So basically today we wanted to talk about slave mentality. Pretty sure that we'll have some kind of title because we never title these until we're done talking. But yeah, it'll be something, and you probably figured it out already because of the title of the video. But yeah, we're going to talk about the slave mentality and how everybody's going free and waking up. These are two terms I hear slung around all the time in our circles, and yet most people are not. And they cling to these slave mentalities. And it's evident in so many ways. For example, I don't believe the news. I don't believe the media. Person turns around and immediately quotes CNN, MNBC, pick one, Fox, doesn't matter. And they will, even though they don't believe the media, they are still going to the media as their primary information source. Or they will just turn around and follow some other, I don't know, YouTuber, for instance, for the news, which, to be fair, often a much better source, and they're usually pretty open with proving their sources. But then they never question. It's the never questioning. I question everything, except for I don't actually question everything. Yeah.
Well, and here's the hilarious thing, is right now we're hyperpolarized as a culture. Everyone acts like the left is on the side of, oh no, the news is correct. You can't, no. The left doesn't buy the news either. This is basically what it turns into. Anything that agrees with their narrative, they push forward, and anything that disagrees, that's not real news. Like, if you're pro-COVID vaccine, for instance, anything that's anti-COVID vaccine is lies.
Fake news.
Fake news. Fake news. And then reverse it, and you have the same thing. And really, from my perspective, this goes back down to spirituality, because that permeates everything. And we are typically talking about ethnic faith and culture and stuff like that. And I noticed this a while ago. There are two types of faiths. And I'm not talking about ethnic versus universal. That's also a difference. But there's two major types of faiths that predominate the world right now. And one of them is far, far larger. And again, not just talking about universalism, but this overlaps it quite a bit. There is the submissive religion, where you have to submit to a higher power. You have to submit to God. You have to submit to Jesus. You have to submit to Vishnu. You have to submit to Muhammad. You have to submit to XYZ. Why? Because you are powerless. And you can see this cropping up in pagan spheres. You have to submit to the will of Odin. You have to submit to the fates. You have to submit to the Norns.
It is all the God's plan. Does that sound familiar? Oh, yeah. All you got to do is remove the hyphen. I believe that's what they're called. The top comma.
Oh, the apostrophe.
The apostrophe. Instead of an apostrophe S, it is a S apostrophe. I believe that's the way it'd work.
Yeah, for possession.
Yeah, but it takes it from multiple to singular. And it's the same freaking thing, but it is all part of the God's plan. It is all God's plan. What's the difference? It's the same mentality. Just go with it. Just stop asking questions. Why are you asking me these questions? How dare you ask me these questions? And so, most people don't dare.
Well, and oddly enough, even though it seems like we're talking about a binary here, it not so much. But it is a clear difference. And when I say freedom, I mean that you're not asked to submit to a higher power. You aren't asked to submit to the gods. You aren't. In paganism, you were not asked to submit to the will of Tyr. You're not asked to submit to the will of the Morrigan. You're not asked to submit to the will of Zeus. You're not asked to submit to the will of Svadog. That's just not a thing in ethnic faith.
Well, in the end, what the slave mentality is giving up responsibility. I give up responsibility for myself, and I lay it at the feet of insert some organization or individual. It could be science, it could be a law, it can be a deity of any of the religions. I give up my responsibility for myself and for my kin. That is the slave mentality.
Well, and it also exists with the I submit to the government. The government will protect me. I don't need guns. The government will provide for me. I don't need to know how to farm. I don't need to know how to cook. I don't need to know how to find a job. I don't need to know a trade. I don't need to know how to do anything that keeps myself alive. The government will do it for me. Like, there was a joke. It was an entire episode of South Park at one point where the whole NSA spying thing was coming out. And again, these last two podcasts we've done are a little out of character because we're getting mildly political, but it's valid because current events are a reflection of ancient instances, and this is cause and effect. But the episode is Butters, instead of viewing the NSA of spying on all people as a bad thing, he literally starts to pray to the government. Thank you, government, for watching over me, for keeping me safe. I trust that you'll know what's right. And he literally starts going to the DMV and holding like evangelical praise him, just dancing and singing and people were actually going up to the people of the DMV to like confess their sins against the government. And the episode ends with the DMV, and by extension the government, has accepted the new religious position. And the joke goes, because earlier on they were talking about how people were leaving Christianity or something because of like the pedophilia thing. So then the joke is the DMV is now committing pedophilia. So they found all these DMV employees with a young boy or something. And then they're like, the only thing you can seem to trust now is your local news media. Yeah. Your local newsman will be back next week in a young boy. It's a play on how these things... It's also why you don't have this constructed organization, because a constructed, concrete, consistent form of power always attracts the worst. Because the best people to put in positions of power have almost invariably been people that have fallen into it, that have gotten to do it because of trauma. Like that one, what was it, Flemish or Dutch sailor, who becomes like just a fucking...
Oh, the pirate guy.
The 7-foot guy with like the massive great sword that starts taking revenge for his family.
We need to ask the Dread Pirate, McThunder, about that guy. And he runs a Telegram channel, by the way, by the name of Guy Dunk Nautica. It's amazing. You need to check it out. That's GEE capital DUNK Nautica. It's stuff full of nautical lore that he digs up, and it's got pirates and sailors and ships and islands and stories of the ocean and mythology around the ocean. It's pretty cool. Go check it out. But yeah, and as far as the slave mentality, it's, well, I don't know. Go ask the news. I don't know. Ask your senator. I don't know. Ask your teacher. I don't know. Ask your priest. And then how many people actually know how to ask a real question anymore? Because, and this is one of my favorite examples to use. A young guy, he's talking to me and he says, well, can you tell me about Odin? That's not a good question. That is not what he meant. So, but I answered his question honestly. Yes. Now, see, if I was the kind of person to take advantage of him, I could have told him anything. or even taking the actual lore and just spin it to what I wanted it to be, because he didn't know how to ask questions. Asking questions. Who encourages good questions? They don't encourage good questions because we all grew up hearing there's no such thing as a stupid question. Big Daddy Celtic God is here to tell you, yes, there is. They are lying to you to keep you a slave. They trained you to be a slave when you was little, and they keep reinforcing these slave mentalities and behaviors as you grow up so that they are extremely hard to identify.
Well, one of the most obvious ones is the ability to tell a story. Like we used to tell oral tradition where people had to remember them. And now we can't even be arsed to read them anymore. Like I found out from talking to someone who had just gotten out of high school. I had read more books in a year than they had to do their entire life, including books for school. And like you've talked to like kids before, and they'll be like, "Oh, what they don't know what recess is." Mm-hmm. They are literally just kept in this meat grinder where these young souls are just.
It's not just them; it's the adults too. It's just the meat grinder changed.
Yes, it's a giant freaking meat grinder. It's designed to pump you out in succulent sausages instead of wild running around oryx and wild boars and bears and wolves and all those great northern animals.
Well, really, it's easier to tell somebody what to do, what to think, how to think, how to feel than it is to actually lead somebody. To lead people, you have to, earn it in some way. Instead, they choose to buy it and then tell people what to do, condition people to expect to be told what to do. Nobody likes to be told what to do. I've noticed this. Nobody likes to be told what to do, but everybody is waiting to be told what to do. That's why all YouTubers, for instance, say, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe, like, and ring that ding-a-ling. That's why they do that, is because we have been conditioned to be told what to do. We won't do it unless we're told to do it. Don't be afraid to unsubscribe from some people, because there's dead subs everywhere. Everybody's got hundreds or thousands of dead subs. I suggest going through your subscription list and the people that you don't watch anymore, or that just don't exist, or they don't produce anything anymore. Unsubscribe. Lighten your load a little bit. He's going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, it's forgotten. But the whole thing is, most people, what they are is they don't actually, we've been trained not to think. We have to be told what to do, what to eat. It's why, like, despite the fact that we had hundreds, if not thousands of years of folk food wisdom, eat this, not that, eat this at this point in the year because it's good for you at that point in time. This is best actually after it's already fallen off the tree and slightly frozen. That sort of thing. Instead, it's, you got to watch your carbohydrates. And I'm not knocking like nutritionists or people that actively have to follow a specific diet for, I don't know, runners or something.
It does come back to fad diets.
Fad diets, because how long were we told butter's evil but sugar good? And then it turned out that was all a giant lobbying of the sugar industry.
Don't forget, people, 8 out of 10 medical professionals will tell you smoking is good for you. This was a once upon thing. It actually started out as 10 out of 10 doctors recommend smoking. Lucky strikes. I believe that was one of the very first verbal commercials. What? We know, you knew as soon as I said that. That's bullshit. But it was said. They used to recommend that you take your daily dose of cocaine. We recommend our heroin, or our opium is what they called it at the time. I know there's technical difference, so I will correct. We recommend that you take 3 daily doses of opium for your health.
Or what about all that arsenic makeup that existed for a while? Lead makeup. It's...
Get asbestos in your home today. It's the healthy alternative. What?
Well, And just to bring another movie into this, I think it's called Branded, but it's literally like this guy is set up as like a prophet or something. But it's a weird way that it's set up. Basically, he's a very talented marketer. And the film basically goes that he's seeing like these things from marketing ads, like consuming people's like brains and stuff. And there's like a whole scene in the movie where he accidentally makes like a fat person kill themselves because of something. So he has to apologize. He has to start this whole fat is beautiful campaign. And then the entire country becomes obese. And then eventually down the road, he actually like finds a way to just destroy all marketing through, like, he used the stones to destroy the stones sort of situation.
Right, but with these old ads that was run, usually they involved things that said, for your health, health benefits, same stuff that they do today. And we know that they're bullcrap, but guess what almost everybody still falls for? Eat the fat-free, meat-free, animal-friendly, vegan diet for your health. Eat the vegetable-free, the animal-friendly, carnivore diet for your health. Make sure to eat this organic, vitamin supplemented. They're still doing it to us, and we're still falling for it because there is this slave mentality that's been driven in for millennia, brought in through the public schooling, reinforced by society, reinforced by the government. The slave mentality, we need to identify this within all of ourselves and start stripping that shit away. And it's going to hurt. It's going to be unpleasant. It's going to be a little bit scary, but it is so worth it. You will come out the other side strong and unconquerable.
Well, and I think, honestly, because most people I know who do go vegan, who do go carnivore diet.
Well, for a little bit, it does help.
Yeah, for a little bit. And it's because they cut out all the junk. Because I've met some really unhealthy vegans because they down Oreos. They down potato chips. But like, let's say you go carnivore and all you eat is like organ meat and like actual like good quality cuts, or even just, eat it properly. You probably weren't getting enough of whatever's in those foods in the first place. So of course you're going to feel better. But eventually your body lacks something. It's the same problem with the vegans. It's just different things are lacking as a result. Like
amongst the carnivore diet, scurvy is a major thing.
Yeah, scurvy for them, starving yourself to freaking death, and basically
organ failure for the other bunch.
Well, like there's a whole joke in like this one TV show where this vegan quits being vegan and this whole activist group breaks up because she's like, I ate a burger yesterday and I don't feel cold anymore. We are a people of extremes. That's what, because like the carnivore diet, there is legitimate health implications there. We are actually more meat heavy than almost any other race on the planet, with the exception of the Inuit, because they are just straight up carnivores.
Well, unless you don't count fish, but last time I checked, fish was made out of meat.
Yeah, it's just a different kind of meat.
Right.
It's like if you count poultry, you got to count fish.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, for instance, that drinking blood is bad. I actually really want to try blood pudding because I had some blood that was cooked with my meat, and that was one of the best parts. Mm-hmm. But right now, our people across the board are so nutrient deprived, whether that's from vegetables.
And that's with all this plentiful food.
Yeah, we are literally in a situation where we have access to almost any food we want, provided you're not, living paycheck to paycheck on ramen noodles. I understand that some people can't even afford ramen noodles. But for those who aren't in that situation, you can pretty much buy whatever you want. You might have to, negotiate, like, do I want this or do I want that? But you have access, more or less.
Do I get the plum or do I get the ramen noodles?
Yeah. Do I get the apples or do I get the pears? Do I get the broccoli or do I get the, pea chips or something? And none of us know how to eat or cook anymore. Like, a few of us know how to cook.
It's a dying art.
Yeah, people are forgetting how to cook. Like, most traditional foods have gone the way of the dodo. And traditional diets as well. That's why, like, a lot of these places, like the blue zones, what happened is they usually eat traditional foods. They eat seasonally. Of course, it's not meat heavy because you don't eat only meat all the time. And then they're usually, as far as I can tell, all of them, all the blue zones, are ethnically homogenous.
Well, and they also have something else in common. Their give a fuck fell off. They just don't care. They're like, screw it. I'm going to go fishing. It's a shame that you're telling me about this war over in this place that has absolutely nothing to do with us, and we aren't even actually involved in it. That's a shame. Want to go fishing because they don't care.
Well, like there is actually one of the blue zones in Europe. I think one's in Asia, two's in Europe, one's in Central America, and the last one's in USA. It's one of those weird religious orders from Christianity, one of those offshoot fanfics that is like the body is the temple, so they eat fairly healthy and they do mild exercise and they're very community oriented.
Let's be honest. They aren't actively trying to eat healthy. What they're doing is eating what they can grow and what nature provides. They aren't going down to the organic food shop and making sure to rifle through only the best of the produce. They aren't doing that. They're actually just eating naturally. Because I've looked into these places. Most of the people in these blue zone communities, they garden, they raise their own animals. They also go out into the surrounding countryside because it's not always forested. There's a couple of them that's not. But they'll go out into the surrounding countryside and they'll harvest mushrooms and berries and fruits that naturally grow, and that's what they eat. So they're not taking any specific approach to it. Well, we must eat the carnivore diet. Well, we must eat a vegetable heavy diet. Well, we must eat all fruits and mushrooms. They don't do that, and they also don't care if something is labeled organic or it's just not labeled organic. And since when is a tomato not organic? You go to the store, you have regular tomatoes, and then you have organic tomatoes. Stop and think about this for a moment. It's a licensing difference.
Well, like I've actually worked at like hippie stores before. A lot of milk, if you can get, especially if you know the farmer, you can actually ask whether or not it has X or Y bullshit in it.
Which most farmers don't want to do anyway.
Yeah, most farmers would rather sell you raw milk, but there's laws, unfortunately. Bullshit laws, but laws. But you can get it for your pet. It's just some raw milk and it's beautiful for your dogs and cats. And maybe just accidentally you might get some too. But anyway, the milk and all this stuff.
I mean, if people actually want to eat healthy, eat pet food.
Oddly enough, yeah, because there's actually higher.
I was so disturbed when you found out I was telling you the truth on that.
Yeah, when you told me that there's actually stricter rules for pet food than human food, that's disturbing. That's disturbing. Yeah, but what I'm getting at is most people they are going for whatever. Organic is a status symbol. Well, like for example,
Hold on. And those status symbols are an extension of the slave class. It's an extension of the slave mentality, because stop and think about what status symbols you're actually pursuing. You're not pursuing the status of I have a large family. You're not pursuing the status of I have much land and it is cared for. It is tilled, or it doesn't have to be tilled, but cared for, curated, stewarded. It's stewarded, and it's helping many families. This is not the status that we chase. We chase the status of the organic produced whatever. And I'm sure you could throw in some more hippy dippy words for it, some more pretentious bullshit on top of it, because you're more familiar with that than I am. We pursue toys. Oh, you have that brand shoe. Look at the brand of shoe that I have. That is a slave mentality in today's world. Oh, you have the LG monitor, but I have the super expensive Maximo Wealthy monitor.
well, I'm gonna say a little story because I have a lot of stories from working at the hippie store. But
the idea is to point out where the slave
I know. That's what I'm at. I'm not deviating from the subject matter. One of my favorites was I worked at the meat counter, and there were a lot of people that would ask for grass-fed chicken and grass-fed pork.
And there's experts that will tell you these things exist.
They don't. Neither of these eat grass. They're not ruminants. And even the ruminants only eat grass as a byproduct. They want the more nutrient-dense clover. The thistle, the clover, all these things that are actually much more nutrient-dense than grass. You know what grass is really, really good for, actually? Soil. It is really good for building up soil. If you want soil retention, you want trees, though. But getting back to the stories at the hippie store, just to finish up, there's also someone who came to the fish counter for veal because he didn't know what the organic salt. I had someone actually ask me for that. Can I get organic salt? And I literally told them that doesn't exist. And they're like, what, how? I'm like, because it's a rock. It by definition cannot be organic.
And they will sell it to you. I've seen it in the store. This is how much the word organic means. It is a licensing right that they pay for. I have seen in the store, no shit. Whoops, sorry. This is YouTube, so I try to keep the swearing to a minimum. I am not kidding you. Organic salt. Now think about this. If this is not marketed towards the slave mentality, I don't know what else is.
Well, it's not just status symbols. And the reason we're on food is because it's the main thing on everybody's mind. It's the easiest thing.
We're picking the low-hanging fruit.
One of my favorites of the dumbest thing was, first of all, I had someone come up to one of my supervisors, and they threw bread at him. They had him cut it up, and then they threw it at him. Why? Because we didn't have the bread they wanted. It's fresh-baked bread. It's like when somebody demanded a rotisserie chicken, and I'm like, they're going to take 3 hours to cook. Well, just give me one now. And they're like, that's not how this works. You understand that it's not a magic box that makes you rotisserie chickens.
Well, you see, what the person thought it was is a special chicken called a rotisserie chicken, and then they was just willing to put it in the oven at home, not understanding what a rotisserie chicken is because they had the slave mentality. But there was something else I was going to bring up, but I can't think of it right now, so I'll let you talk, and I'll ignore you while I think really hard about what it was.
Well, for anyone who doesn't know what a rotisserie chicken is, here's what it is. It is a chicken. And usually many chickens, just chickens, corpses. You remove the organs if there's any left in there, the gizzards, the kidneys and whatnot. The feathers, occasionally there's a couple feathers left. And then you skewer them. And then what you do is you typically do a salt and pepper mixture. Sometimes people add other seasonings, but you just rub that on the inside and the outside. Then you get the rotisserie oven set to the right temperature. You want to make sure it's on the right temperature because it will spin on its own without that. And you stick the rotisserie chickens in there. And then you let them spin around. What happens is as they cook, their own fat bastes them. And then the fat of the other chickens bastes them. And these chickens are really, really fatty.
The one on the bottom tastes the best.
Yeah, that's why the one on the bottom tastes the best. Is it got all the last bit of drippings. That's what a rotisserie chicken is. It is not a specific kind of bird. And now, the pièce de résistance, my personal favorite, the gluten-free crowd. Dear fucking gods, oh crap, it's YouTube. But I just swore twice.
We're getting too used to the podcast.
If you want the uncensored, full-on, no bleeping version.
Oh, and the topics, just the topics that we cannot talk about here. Look for us on podcast. It's Hyperborean Radio, and I don't know if it shows up on the podcast or not, but I put uncensored inside of brackets. So it's Hyperborean Radio uncensored on podcast. It might show up as that or just as Hyperborean Radio, but so far as I know, we're the only ones out there. So yes, you get topics that we cannot talk about here on YouTube, as well as the occasional swears.
Well, but anyway, the gluten-free crowd. It did not take me long to realize nobody understood what gluten was. It annoyed me because people would complain about the fact that their bread was smaller. Like, why is this smaller?
Why is it hard?
Yeah, I'm like, because there's no gluten in it. Gluten is what makes bread grow.
Why doesn't it taste good?
Yeah. Why doesn't it taste good? Or one of my favorites, someone complained that their open-faced sandwich didn't have avocado on it. And I told them there's avocado on it. Because what I had done is when avocado gets nice and soft and weirdos like to eat it, because it's terrible, you spread it. I spread it like freaking peanut butter. Why? Because it's an open-faced sandwich. You don't want slices of avocado falling off. But he demanded more avocado, and eventually my boss just gave it to him. Okay, that was a random quip, but it, like, when I worked at the hippie store, I was the butcher, the baker. I was practically the candlestick maker. So it did everything at the freaking place. So I've run the gamut. Like the time someone screamed at the produce guy because the pineapple, like not canned pineapple, the pineapple, just a pineapple in the produce section, just a pineapple, was not gluten-free. So she proceeded to scream at him for not labeling it gluten-free. This is how little people understand gluten-free and how much they fear gluten.
Which is the symptom of the slave mentality. They just repeat stuff. They regurgitate this information and, in essence, live in fear and or anger, because fear begets anger. And it's because they care. That's why in some of our messaging, I'm like, take the anger, and yes, I understand it's justified. Set it to the side and embrace apathy. You can still be angry about that, but do not let it rule your life. You are angry because you care about your people, but stop being angry at the people that's doing it and be apathetic. Like the fly that lands on your sandwich, and you will then get up and kill every fly in the room. Apathy. Apathy allows you to actually do something. Anger, you just swing around blindly, and then you even forget what you're doing. But the slave mentality, it feeds on fear. And it feeds the fear itself. There's slogans. Oh, the slave mentality requires so many slogans. Gluten-free, organic, go-free, pet-friendly. We've heard all of these slogans said again and again and again. Build back better. That's my new favorite one. Build back better.
Well, it's like Dune. I have not read the books or seen the movies, but there's a really good line in the in just the trailer for it that showed up. Fear is the mind killer, and when the fear is gone, only I will remain. We cannot function on fear. Fear functions on us. We cannot focus, we cannot move forward if we are constantly in fear. Here's the thing. The only time you can be brave or courageous is when there is danger, when you are fearful. But wallowing in fear and anger, because what does the dog do when it's really scared? It gets angry. What does the man or the woman do when they are scared? They prepare.
Yes, but what does the average male and female do when they're scared? They run away or lash out. The man or woman, on the other hand, prepare. So set the slave mentality aside. Start identifying it within yourself. And it's going to take more than 5 minutes. Don't fall into but I ain't got time for that. Too long didn't read. The speed reading. The listening to a podcast or a video on 2 times speed. These things are encouraged to shut your brain down. These slogans are said again and again and again to shut your brain down, because that's what you do to slaves. You don't want them to think. You don't want them to question. You don't want them to actually act.
Well, and it's also, you make them want things that they don't need. And another thing is, like, it's like that old saying. The fisherman goes out and he catches enough fish to bring home and sell and, live his life. And then he kind of just lays back and enjoys the day. And a bigger ship comes by and he's like, well, why don't you catch more fish? And he's like, well, I caught enough for what I need. And he's like, well, if you caught more, then you could eventually buy another boat and hire someone else to do it. And then you can keep going and going and going until you have a massive fleet of fishing vessels. And then he's like, and then what? Well, then you can lie back and relax and enjoy life. And he's like, what do you think I'm doing now? That's the thing. You are constantly told that you want more and more. And it's not that you shouldn't be willing to want more, but
Or to work for more.
or work for more. If you truly want to be better and be in a better situation. But here's the thing is, I understand we need phones right now. There is no option to not have a phone right now.
Oh, yeah. I tried turning my phone off. It was horrible because you can't actually do anything. You can't access your bank accounts. You can't access your internet crap. You can't. You have to have a phone number. I mean, you probably don't have to have your own individual phone number, but then you have to have full-time access to the person that does have the phone. So really, for a family, one phone should be enough, but then the phone stays home. When you're out and about, you do it old school because, well, you know, the person has to take their phone with them because then how am I supposed to get a hold of them, or how, if something happens to them, how are they supposed to get a hold of me? Yeah, that was called like 2000 and before.
Well, and here's the thing: is what you just recommended is basically have a home phone. This is the hilarious thing: is things are getting so ridiculous that they're actually like reverting back to where they were. Like, for instance, one of my favorites is streaming. When we just
Welcome
had
to the radio.
yeah, well, when we just
That's why we named it Hyperborean
yeah,
Radio.
yeah, exactly. But you had Netflix, then you had Hulu, and you had Amazon Prime, and all of these progressively got worse, and then more and more added, and then they started hoarding certain shows, and now if you want,
Now you have television networks.
yes, that you have to pay for individually, and it's actually getting to the point where it is more expensive than cable.
If you have everything.
Yes, if you have everything. For obvious reasons, we don't do that. But it is a whole freaking thing. Is they have effectively gotten things where things are... technology has advanced. But all that's happened is things have stayed more the same. It's gotten worse.
Well, and information, the confirmation bias. That is also something that is trained into us. Confirmation bias. Oh, you don't believe what I said about the Confederacy? They're a student of mine. Look in your history book, which says exactly what I told you, but they only offer you the book that says what they said. They don't encourage you to go to the library, and then not just that library, but go online, since we got the magic boxes now, or go to other libraries and actually read books and diaries of the time. They don't encourage that because they are training slaves.
Yeah, they deny all the critical thinking skills. I mean, it's like the whole thing. It's bred in circuses. That's the entirety of it.
Well, how many things have we called out? We've caught some of our friends out on this, where we're pretty prolific with things that we write. Prolific is a fancy word for that means we write a lot. We write a lot of stuff. And, oh, hey, can you read this for me? Because this is something I'm going to be putting out. I'm curious if it's going to be understood the right way. Yeah, sure, I can read it for you. Oh, what did you think? Well, it was good. Well, what part did you like the best? And you can hear it in their voice. They didn't actually read it. They read it, but they sped read it because they didn't have the time to sit there and actually. And we all know, we've all said this, we all know it's a lie. It's an excuse. We have the time to sit down and read something, especially if it's just a couple pages at a time.
Well, and there's also the devaluing of human relationships, because here's the thing is, you don't want your cattle to be too attached to the calf. Mm-hmm. So what do? You increasingly make friends mean nothing. I have 2,000 friends on Facebook. You have 2,000 strangers that like looking at you. Mm-hmm. Or family is just whoever you want it to be, which is technically true, but not in the way they want it to be. And you see this over and over again in films. I left my family, but I have my real family. And sometimes they put it in movies that shouldn't have it, like Suicide Squad.
Well,
it's terrible.
It comes back to that thing that you was talking. Man, we need to get another mic. We need some. What's that called? Where people give you money for listening to you? Supporters. We need some financial supporters so we can afford another mic. Dang it! Help us out. Swinging this one mic back and forth is killing us.
We're too opinionated.
Well, yeah. Well, we have no problem really with letting each other talk and then taking turns. However, we have to swing the mic back and forth, and two large and working on extremely muscular guys sitting close together swinging a mic back and forth. Well, it's just not comfortable. Please buy us another mic. Anyways, I forgot where I was going with it. But the slave mentality, yeah, it shows up in so many different ways. And like earlier you brought up, we used to tell each other stories. Our people, we love stories. We love them. And we cherish them, and we develop them, and we share them. And we used to share them by telling them to each other. And then we started writing them down. And we would both write them down and tell each other. And if we wanted new stories, we'd pick up the book and we'd read the story and we'd memorize the story, and then we'd share the story by telling the story. And then along came radio. And we would read the stories if we wanted new stories, and we would listen to the wonderful orator on the radio telling us stories. And play acting. We'd go watch the stories and listen to the stories on the radio, like the Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds. Very popular, scared the shit out of some people, apparently scared the crap out of some people apparently when it first came out. Made some people nervous. Other people was like, ha ha ha, because they're smart enough to realize this is just a story because they listened. And then along comes the flickers. That's the old word for movies. The flickering pictures, or the flickers. And then people would go and watch the stories and read the stories on the screen because there was no sound yet. And they would still read the stories from the books, and they would tell each other stories. Now, if it's not on a YouTube video, this is where we've gotten to. If it's not on a YouTube video, an audio book, which I'm not convinced most people actually listen to audiobooks. I'm more convinced that people will buy them, say that they listen to them, play them at double speed, so they catch almost none of it, and then think that they've listened to it. But nobody wants to read anything. Nobody wants to talk to anybody else anymore. And it's sad. It is, they have confined our storytelling to Hulu, Amazon, Paramount, these production companies. And we just absorb them. However, everybody is complaining that media is horrible now. It's because we've forgotten how to tell stories. That's why it's horrible. We remember what they're supposed to be, but we forgot how to tell them.
Well, a good example of this actually is how media has impacted people's views of mythology. Like, for instance, Loki is not Thor's brother. Loki is not Odin's kid. Loki is actually Odin's blood brother.
And he's a giant.
He is a giant, not a god.
Not a frost giant.
Not a frost giant. Because there's many different kinds of giants, actually. Number 2, Heimdall is not black. I should not have to explain this, but apparently some people, like, you actually had someone ask you, how did a black guy get in the Norse pantheon?
Yes.
Or Lugh is not a dark elf. Hel is not evil, nor is she the son of Odin. Or a daughter of Odin.
Well, and yeah, because Hel is the daughter of Loki. Lugh is not a freaking dark elf. But I have seen these things on YouTube by people that, when I was researching this is what I found. And then they give you Marvel and the Hellboy series. They're doing their research off from movies. Come on, people. And then people listen to these experts, and there's books out there. There's books out there that's floating around that claim that Loki and Thor are brothers. Why is this becoming a thing? It's because of the slave mentality. Nobody is questioning anything.
Well, that's like I read a book on goddesses and folk customs, and they bring up Freya in the Nibelungenlied. Freya is not in the Nibelungenlied. Freya is in the Ring Cycle by Wagner. This is not new, using modern media to influence how you view old myths, because plenty of people might have listened to or watched Wagner's operas, or even looked at the pictures of Wagner's opera. A lot of them were done by Arthur Rackham. They're fantastic. However, he mostly based that off Norse mythology, not the actual epic of the Nibelungenlied. He mostly just took the name.
Well, and let's be honest, most of these experts, because that's part of the slave mentality, is they throw the word expert out there, or doctor, or scientist, or teacher, or professor of. They will throw these things out there, and then we're trained to just simply accept it. But odds are, most of these experts didn't even watch or listen to Wagner. They didn't actually go to any of the source material. What they did was they went to expert Robert B. Busybody, who talked about somebody who talked about somebody who then watched or listened or diagnosed or picked apart Wagner's what? Ring cycle, whatever. That piece that he did. I am horrible with names. Forgive me. But yeah, they didn't actually go to it themselves. And then they combine what they said with things that people are saying around the internet about, I don't know, Loki and Thor are brothers and Hel is their sister and Lu is a dark elf. And they combine all this together and then put it out there. And then here comes this person who's trying to actually learn something, who's trying to shake all this stuff off, but they're still possessed of this slave mentality. They see this expert, and they might not believe that one right off the bat, who says all this stuff, which is incorrect because nobody went to the source because, too long didn't read. So then they watch another YouTuber who says exactly the same thing. And then they watch another YouTuber who says exactly the same thing. None of these people that's presenting this information went to the source, and the person that's watching it doesn't go to the source either because it's too long, can't read it. Instead, I can watch 16 hours worth of videos about this thing and never look at the source myself. And I know this sounds rich coming from us, but look how popular we are. It's because we've actually looked at the stories, and people don't like it when we tell them the truth.
Well, when I first got into paganism, because I'd like to remind people I've only been pagan for a few years. This is where you get to if you actually do a lot of work. But
well, it's not even a lot of work.
No,
you
just
don't have to know all the stories.
No, not really. But
actually, I prefer that they didn't bother.
I'm just a nerd, so I did a lot of research. But when I first got into paganism and I was asking questions, I realized really quickly a lot of people did not have good answers. And like one key example is I was talking about when the veil is thin. And people got really aggressive that I would dare suggest that there was more than one time a year that the veil was thin.
I think I was the only one telling you there's like 4, 5, 6 of them, depends.
Depending on the weather, you can basically have it all year round.
Right, and then you did research and found out, guess who was right?
Yeah, but it was like it's obvious that the veil is thin if you look at the mythology around Yule. But they were adamant that it was not around Yule, that it was like Samhain or something. Mm-hmm. No, it's because it needs to be one thing at one time, and that has to be how it is all the time, every year. And they actually got aggressive about it. Like, how dare you question this? Mm-hmm. And
how dare you question, you dirty slave?
And then another person was talking about how he doesn't like Loki because just like Thor's, he's Thor's brother, and he has a brother and he has like a brother like that. And I'm like, but they're not siblings. Mm-hmm. And it's like these people that present themselves as authorities in the pagan sphere. Because I'll be honest, my general opinion of genealogies is they're symbolic and they change all the time because they're just symbolic. So one tribe will have a completely different genealogy from another tribe, potentially.
Well, and that's why we don't really push and talk about the mythology a whole lot. Obviously, we do talk about it, but we don't really, really pound on it like everybody else. Instead, we take the approach of if you read the stories and you actually consider them, that's fine. But honestly, I'd rather be backed by a bunch of godless heathens that they don't know all the academic crap. They enjoy a good story. They enjoy spending time with friends and family and developing communities, getting their hands dirty, actually doing things. I would rather be surrounded by the dirty, godless, heathen masses that is strong, courageous, and cunning or wise. So they can look out in the world and they can see things, see through some of the crap that's out there and just mountains of crap and see it for what it is. And then also see the good and the beautiful things. These are the people I'd rather spend my time with. You don't have to know all of the stories, but don't simply regurgitate the stories. We do our best to present the truth, and people don't like that. We are brutal and honest, and that is our kindness. But when we find things, because the lore keeper likes to talk about lore, and it's great. And sometimes I'll bring it up on the show, and we discuss it all the time. But when he finds new discoveries, he likes to share the new discoveries, and that's why we call him the lore keeper. Is because he's accumulated so many stories so quickly. It's just crazy, and he doesn't take. Well, this one here says this, and this one here says that. They're about the same thing, so they must be the same. No, he questions everything as he goes through. He's like, well, they're calling this one here Frigg, and this one here Frigg Holda. Take Frigg Holda, throw it off to the side. It's a maybe pile, might be the same thing. Oh, wait, it means the witch Holda. So this one is about Holda, and this one here is about Frigg, which probably means just witch. So it's and that's kind of how he goes through things. He's constantly thinking. And it's not just about the stories. It's mostly about the living part. That's why I'd rather get the godless masses follow us than a bunch of useless academics.
Well, and to make it very clear, it was Strigamholda.
Thank you.
But the S was spelled with that weird little line, and they read it as Frigg.
I apologize for my name recognition.
No, the only reason I'm saying that is because
it's important that you straighten it out for people.
Yeah, it wasn't Frigg Holda, but they started writing it as Frigg Holda. Because here's the thing. Here's something that a lot of people don't know. Holda is mentioned as far back as around the first millennia. In other words, her name predates by hundreds of years the Poetic and Prose Edda. Mm-hmm. In other words, she predates the use of Frigg in terms of written record. Mm-hmm. They are not the same. And people will say Perchta and Hala are the same as Frigg. And I threw that out of the water once I dug into Holda and Hala enough. Even Holda and Hala appear as separate entities in some stories. Same with Perchta and Birchta. And those two are so conflated, I can't separate them into separate deities accurately. But they appear as separate entities. So that's distinctly possible. They are separate entities. And then people will combine Perchta and Holda.
But not to beat on the whole thing. Where
Yeah.
What is the slave mentality around this? People will just grab a hold of this information. The slave mentality part of this discussion involving this is a professor, an author, an expert, which all it takes to be an expert is to publish one book or do enough podcasts. All of a sudden, you're an expert. But they will take this information and just run with it at face value. And then because everybody else repeats the same thing that's not true, they assume that it is true. Because if you say something to the contrary, everybody dogpiles on you. And it doesn't have to be just around the mythology. It's around science. Look into something scientific. Go down the rabbit hole and find the real science around, I don't know, genealogy. Pick a subject. It doesn't matter what it is. And then present the actual science of it and watch everybody dogpile on you. Why? Because it doesn't hold up to the narrative that they've been fed as a slave.
Well, it's like, for instance, the speed of light. It was fixed because they chose to fix it. They don't actually have an accurate read on the speed of light. But because they solidified it, now they have something they can use in the math, which means that every time they use that on the math, it's wrong. However, like, we even saw a video of this. A scientist was asking this question, and the scientist he was talking to was actively rejecting it because it fucks with science too much. And here's the thing is, I don't believe in science Because science is not meant to be believed in. It is meant to be seen. It is meant to be observed. That is the point of science. It is absent belief. It doesn't matter if you believe in chemistry. You are still going to have a bad reaction when you throw raw sodium into water. It doesn't matter that if you believe that's going to happen or not. That's not how science works. It is not a religion. It is not based on belief. So no, I don't believe in science. But it's not because I believe science is a bunch of hokum pokum and there's secretly wizards behind all those bottles and lab coats. No, it's because you don't need belief for something that is physical. I don't need to believe that's my hand. I know it's my hand.
Right. And then they use this word belief to actually mess with it. And they will put out false statements. There's all kinds of I didn't need the videos because I can do the math. But there is all kinds of ways where polls and I forgot the word. Statistics can be meddled with. I could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt carrots kill anyone that eat them. And I can get it actually, I could, if I had enough money, get scientists to sign off on it as a scientific fact. Why? Because if I chased long enough, anybody that ever ate a carrot, guess what happens to them 100% of the time? They will die. It is easy to fudge the science, which is why they've gone the route of saying, believe the science. It's like the thing I was saying earlier with 10 out of 10 doctors recommend that you smoke 1 pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes a day for your health.
Yeah, it
was scientifically proven.
Yeah. And here's the thing, science, because of the way it's used now, it's just a marketing tool. Bill Nye, the science guy with less academic credentials than the villain of Rocky 3.
He's an actor.
Yes. With a I believe it's either a master's or a doctorate in some kind of science.
Yeah.
I think it's chemistry, but I'm not sure.
It's in question, though.
But basically, long story short, they are...
His, I think, Bill Nye's...
Well, I wasn't talking about Bill Nye. I was talking about the guy. I forget his name. He's a Russian actor.
Oh, okay. Because Bill Nye's, I believe, is honorary. Neil deGrasse Tyson actually has a doctorate. I think that he... Neil deGrasse Tyson's, I think, is a real degree. Bill Nye's is a honorary degree because he played a scientist on TV for a kids show.
My favorite is there's an old clip from the Bill Nye show where he explains how chromosomes work and how men, male and females, no, this is old, where he was XY equals male, XX equals female, explaining chromosomes at that basic level to children at a basic level. It's an oversimplification, but it's accurate enough. And then you had the whole extremely cringy dance with that Bill Nye TV show where he was explaining the myriad of genders. And
the newer one?
Yeah, and that strange ice cream sexuality clip that can't... Yeah, it's a whole thing.
But yes, we're coming to the end of our broadcasting time here. It's been a lovely hour with all of you. Mostly lovely people, and those of you who aren't lovely, we tolerated you. But yes, the whole point of today's broadcast was to point out just how thoroughly this slave mentality goes through the culture, and it starts from the beginning all the way through. So we never tell people, well, just take our word on it. Don't. I mean, if you're going to take somebody's word on lore, for instance, go with the lore keeper. Most of these other people, they don't know what they're talking about. We've ripped apart so much of academia, which is why so many people are so angry with us. And they've taken so many liberties and leaps of logic with no proof, except for the other guy that said the exact same thing, who made the exact same leap of logic, so therefore it is confirmed water is actually sand. If you can get enough people to say that, it becomes true, apparently, even though it's not. So be aware of the slave mentality start picking it out of yourself. Stop having these knee-jerk reactions to something that's contrary to what it is that you want to believe. We all want to believe certain things. And that's fine. It's natural. That's why we have the deities. If you need to believe in something, we have the deities. If you don't need to believe in them, well, we have them anyways. Their stories are still valid to describe who we are as a people. Both of these things can actually be true at the same time. So I'm going to end it with, be brave. Keep your head down and your powder dry.
And I will simply task people with this. And we've said it before, we'll say it again. You don't even have to take anything we say as just basic fact. But don't be afraid to ask questions. And yes, there's such a thing as a stupid question. But one of the things that made me where I'm at with lore is I was constantly willing to ask questions. And I don't have answers to every question I've ever asked myself. But one thing I found is that people get incredibly uncomfortable and even angry when you make them have to question. And that is one of the dead giveaways of a slave. Someone who can actually think.
Beware of slogans.
Beware of slogans. Beware of people giving you answers and not allowing you to question things. Feel free to question everything I have, everything I've said, everything I've ever said. But this is my simple request. Ask questions about anything. Genuinely. Don't ask questions for this reason, which is don't ask questions just to try to make the other person look like an idiot. And it's because of this very simple thing. A lot of people will ask questions, not because they want to know the answer. They will actually ignore and deny your answer. We've had guests before that will ask the same question 7 different times, trying to entrap us into an answer. Mm-hmm. The reality is this.
Well, and here's the crazy thing. We answered the question 7 different ways.
Because we were trying to figure...
None of them were contradictory answers.
Because we were trying to answer their question. We were like, oh, maybe we got it wrong.
Question.
Yeah, maybe we got it wrong this time. Maybe. No. If you're asking a question as a trap, it's not a question, it's an entrapment. But again, feel free to ask any question you want.
And we were so naive, we didn't even notice.
Not until afterwards. But asking a question because you want to know the answer, asking a question to try and find something, to try and look further. How did I get to the opinion where I don't consider Wotan and Odin the same deity? Very simple, actually. I asked myself, without the etymology, is there any proof they're the same god? And I have still yet to find it. Just feel free to ask questions and grow from it. But be genuine, be truthful, and be honest about yourself and what you want to find. And if you follow that path, you will discover what you're looking for, because you will ask. And even if you personally in your lifetime cannot solve the question, the generations after you might be able to. And you leave a legacy, and that's the purpose.
Awkward ending. Is that it? Yeah. All right, so we're out of here. We're going to sing you out with some war drums. Everybody, keep it tight.